Okay.
Now I'm
Okay,
off to
thanks, Sam. Have a
breakfast
great
with my
time.
family. I'm off to breakfast with my family.
Yeah,
Thanks,
enjoy,
guys.
Sam. Thank you.
I'll be back next weekend. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, for the purpose of the recording, which I just started, Sam is not going to be present today. Okay, Eric, you're
Hello.
showing up here after a long spell. How about a long
Yeah.
check-in and explanation of what brings you around after all these years?
Okay. Well, I have a long weekend this weekend. I'm off until Wednesday, so actually can come up above water for a little breath. I mean, I've been involved in the Facebook chat recently, and I figured I'll show my face and say hi to everybody. And yeah, I mean, I guess Sundays are usually an unblocking call, so maybe I could get unblocked. We'll see. We'll see about that. But yeah, I mean, it seems like there's interesting things going on, and I had posted some ideas. I posted like a PDF about some ideas I had, and just figured I'd follow up and see if people. I mean, what potential synergies we might have with each other. And just to really, I mean, I was alone like last night and this morning, and actually made a video on YouTube this morning. And then, yeah, so I had some options of what I could do. I just decided, okay, I'm going to try this 11 o'clock call, and I'm glad I'm here. It's nice to see all of you.
Yeah, if you want to pick an agenda, feel free. Go ahead, Joshua.
I'm just waving hi to Eric. Good to see you, Eric.
Good to see you, Josh. Yep.
Waving hi to you, Sam and Barry.
All right.
Yep.
For the benefit of Sam Chen, who I think you haven't met.
I haven't.
Eric is a longtime friend of this crew, and especially, I think you're pretty close to Stacy, or either local or
well, she's in New York.
Yeah.
I visited her a few times up in New York, but I've been involved when she's had issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I got into this when it started with whatever PKE, Practical Knowledge Ecology, and then those people told me about this group. And then eventually I got into Jerry Mikowski's group. And so I've been like more regular with Jerry Mikowski's group, but recently I've been watching some of your videos here and seeing, yeah, just trying to get a sense of where you are now, and what you see going on, and where you may be going. So maybe that's the agenda, just an update of where GCC is right now and what you want to do with it. And then I'll see where I fit in.
You have been watching some of the recent uploaded videos on you, so I don't need to fill you in on the soap opera.
No, that you don't need to fill me in on.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm more interested in like how you perceive what's going on in the world now and where GCC fits in. Like, what is its new mission?
Okay. Sam, you want to give some perspective from your quarter, since Eric doesn't know you?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a business owner that run a high-tech entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley for about 40 years, and I get to know Sam about 10 years ago, and he invited me about what, 3 months ago, something like 2 or 3 months ago, and I just continued. I'm trying to get a sense again, you know, where is it going? And like this morning, I just thought about a metaphor that perhaps might be helpful for us. Think of it like we have several tour buses, and each of them have a label on it, and some of them have no labels on it, doesn't know where it's going. And then we have small buses that tow some small, what should I say, a small vehicle behind the bus that people just take off and have branch off. And I tell you, it's chaos.
Yeah.
We don't have a tour agency, whatever you want to call that, you know. And we have a lot of tour guide that they want to take you to wherever they want to take you. And so we're
Mhm.
sort of having fun, just like no agenda,
Yeah,
no
cool.
destination, no goal. So as I say, so if we want to get anything done, we need to put labels on the tour bus. Okay, we're going,
Right.
going to Boston or going to wherever. So unless we have that's decision number one. And before we had the decision number one, we have decision number 0, which is called motivation. I call them compelling reason. So I must go to Boston because I want to give Barry a hug or something, whatever the
Mhm.
reason that may be, So unless you have a motivation enough, compelling reason enough that allow me to put a label on the bus,
Mhm.
we're not going anywhere again. So unless
Okay.
motivation comes, the destination is not decided, and then we just scatter again. So I'm fine with it, all that. I'm just saying
Okay, cool.
destination is having fun with not sure where it's going. We're wasting a lot of gas. That's why, we got plenty of gas.
Okay, yeah, Josh.
Joshua.
I was just gonna catch up with you, Eric, and just from my perspective, it's we've got 4, 5, 6, 7 roughly that pop in and out systems thinkers, and there's no shortage of systems to think about. So we've been
Yep.
especially with all these new large language model systems
Oh,
being
yeah.
coming up. And I think last time we talked, what was 2019? I don't know
Mhm.
when the last time, I'm trying to remember the last time. My favorite GCC meeting was the meeting you and Sam Hahn regulated 5 minutes, and it was
Yeah.
concise, clear. Do you remember that meeting?
That was right when COVID started. I think it was
Mhm.
that May that, I had the idea, like he was giving people turns at leading the meeting. And my idea was to try to use the brain and to put a little timer on the screen so people know how much time they have to talk and then capture everybody's thoughts. And that brain is still out there. But it's never been followed up on. But it was a good practice for people to express themselves, given we were all going through the same thing, and figuring out what makes sense. Where do we go from here now that we're all locked down? And
Yeah.
And
So
observations from different parts of the world. How is it different in other states and countries? Yeah.
yeah, the one thing we haven't done that I would have liked to do more is we've talked a lot about local politics, meaning USA politics, North
Mhm.
American,
Yep.
but not global. We did talk a little bit before when things were heating up last year in Taiwan, and
Mhm.
Sam was very concerned about that. And
Of course.
we talked a little bit, I think, before the Ukraine war, but after the war in Ukraine, it was it's almost like a taboo subject to start talking about global politics, just because it's so it gets so heated due to
Yeah.
the closeness with nuclear war at this moment in time. So, but
Yeah.
to me, yeah, the latest thing that I've done is I got a really nice visualized GDP chart of the world
Mhm.
with 180 countries, and I'm happy to share it with the group here too. But it shows a visual graph of circles of Asia, North America, Europe, and the rest of the world in Africa. And by size, you can see the GDP of Russia is just about the same size as the GDP of Mexico.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So I personally would like, as far as where we're going, I would like to move towards which systems are working in other parts of the world and
Mhm.
which systems could we adopt and scale, not in the whole globe, but in different countries that are willing to govern in ways that, such as the governance system in Switzerland is very different than the governance system in France.
Sure.
So those systems work for those areas because of the way they've carved out the cantons and they've carved out certain niches. And the big conversation I'd like to have at some point is, in America itself, we have the 50 states, but there's definitely little groups of, if you will, of same type thinking in terms
Mhm.
of a couple of states. So meaning not Texas and Florida are very different states very different economies, very different, but there's
Mhm.
certain type of thinking that runs through. They're both leaning more Republican, but also leaning more towards liberty and freedom than say California or New York or
Yeah.
Illinois. So
Yeah, what
yeah.
really concerns me is the division among people, how we've been polarized so much now, and how do we get back together from that? And I mean, if we took the time to sit down and have these long conversations and understand where each other's coming from, that's a start. And I'm sure there are places that are doing that. And but where practically for each one of us, what is really practical? I mean, there's local stuff, and yeah, so
Well, the other
yeah,
thing I was going to bring up, there was just a conference. I think it's I'm not sure where they held it, but it's called Databricks.
yeah.
Are you guys familiar with that?
Well,
So
I am, yeah.
Out of that conference, I think a lot of computer scientists were talking about different ways to normalize data, control data, and the Spark open source Spark. I think that comes from Stanford and the Apache open source. How we utilize these large data sets that we're able to
Mhm.
build, and I think that's the game changer where we can have all the different states give all their different data and sort of come up with some sort of normalized data charts that the entire United States can look at without arguing and say, this is how North Carolina dealt with the lockdown. This is how Texas dealt with the lockdown. This is how Wyoming dealt with the lockdown. But the populations are different. The people are different. And also the immunity are different. The different states have different policies for health in terms of who gets vaccinated at what age.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah, I think there's even a more fundamental problem is like, well, the issues of education, there's polarization because of different ways people think, the
mhm.
way they grow up, and so I would say between the generations, so like there's a certain art of getting through to a millennial, certain art of getting through to the elderly, and the people who have those skills, yeah, they're in pockets around the country or around the world. So yeah, if you're trying to look at systems, it's how do you get everybody on the same page? Now, an example is 1960s. Kennedy said, we're going to the moon, and we're doing it in this decade. Well, what was so different about us back then that let that happen? And yeah, so versus today, yeah, to have a real strong leader who can motivate people to really tackle the problems, and yeah, go ahead,
Just
Josh.
from my perspective, I'm seeing in the debates lately is someone's looking at one chart, interpreting it one way, another person's looking at the same chart and interpreting it a completely different way.
Mhm.
And they're arguing that this is called science. Well, science has to be interpreted. And the papers that come out, there's so many different repositories for peer-reviewed studied papers
Mhm.
that it depends on which pie chart was pulled from. It might be the same data, but
Yeah,
how you pull the data and how it's displayed and then how it's interpreted and then how it's argued is confusing the public. So it's like,
yes, exactly. Yeah, so who are the people digging down to the footnotes and checking all that? And then can you trust them? And how do you know what's true anymore?
yeah. And just to share with Barry and Sam, the PKE evolved into, do you remember what they changed their name to? I'm trying to remember.
Was it Lauren who took it in a
Yeah,
different Seco lab, right?
Kiko, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, Kiko.
And Lauren,
Charles and Lauren, yeah. That
they were
lasted
two.
for a while. Mhm.
Yeah, it lasted for a while, but they had a lot of interesting meetings because Charles is a big advocate for music. So he had a lot of jazz musicians come on, and we
Nice.
had some really deep, in-depth discussions on what is truth? How do you pull truth out? What are lies? And it turned into some real interesting racial conversations between a lot of different races and
Yeah,
how
the
we
more you could
interpret each other.
integrate people, that's great. Yeah, more diversity is better. Yeah.
I just wanted to share with you, Sam, and also if you're not, weren't in those Kiko Lab conversations, Barry, that out of PKE came into Charles Blass was very passionate about what it means for truth. And this was right when the pandemic started, when Trump was just telling so many different things out of his mouth. No one knew what the hell to believe, what was, if he was lying or not lying. And, you know, we remember the Trump era. So that was a big, like, okay, so how do we interpret truthiness and what is true? And I think that was on all of our minds back then. But I don't think we had the tools back then to actually come up with some sort of objective data. And I do think now with large language models, we still don't have the tools at this moment, but we could, if we could use big data and large language models to interpret it objectively. And I think that's the big question of the day is, will these large language models spit out gobbledygook and still tell us untrue things, or will it hone in, refine, and get sharper in terms of these models finding what the truth is? Is it going to, in other words, garbage in, garbage out? Is it going to be good data refining the large language models to find what the actual truthful information is? And is it a recursive loop of untruths? So
Go ahead.
complete.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I want to listen more. Yeah,
These
this
are
is
things that
good.
are on my mind. I've been doing the Sam Chan method of just being quiet in the last year here at GCC and letting everyone talk. But having you step in made me a little bit braver to say, hey, these are the things that are on my mind. So I didn't want you to come in and think these were not on my mind because I haven't been speaking them as much at GCC, but I have in other organizations.
Okay, great. Yes, Sam.
Thank you. That's my check-in for you, Eric, and I'm complete.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
So I'm thinking about, as I listen to you, and it's impressive, and I'm so glad you brought out the go to the moon metaphor. I think it's really important that I'm looking for in this world right now. I would say that iOS is the most successful product introduction out there that's been maintained for a long time, and people are using it. I'm using it, you know. So from my perspective, if I model successful execution, successful implementation, successful what I call launching or whatever. So do they care about truth or not truth? You know, do they care about, you know, getting it perfect to get it launched or not? I mean, we are going on version, major version, small version, big version. And like what Steve Jobs was saying, you know, we are designing something that people don't know that they need it yet. It's the only thing that I know that's a secret sauce that compared to other products. So given that model of success implementation or launching, you know, again, it's the tour bus, we have to put this iPhone, you know, it can be a camera, can be a whatever that want to be, and people that don't know they need it yet. So that tour bus is going to get us somewhere. And I'm going to add one more factor besides compelling reason and knowing where we're going on the tour bus. We have limited fuel and limited time, and the what do you call it? The driver is only awake for so many hours a day, you know. So limited, like what you're saying, Eric, like 5 minutes is good because it helps you to condense everything to the essence of what you don't have a time to waste. You don't have an opportunity to get distracted from that perspective. So do we have a compelling reason? Do we know where we're going? And what's our time limit right now? So unless we can do it, we can increment by even nano steps. It's better than no steps.
Yeah, baby steps. Yep. I just want to comment. So if you think about the iPhone, now also think about Apple's relationship with China. So could China say, hey, Apple, you need to censor news about Taiwan? And Apple would go along with that. That's another wrinkle there when we come to where is truth. And then does Taiwan have people who will do the documentary news on the spot? Yeah, so yeah, it's a crazy world, but here we are. It's interesting
So
times.
again, I'm so glad you brought the Taiwan and China scenario. So now the question becomes again, that's what I mean by sidetrack. So we have some buses that have no labels and they have sidetracks. So now once you get that, so is politics more important than the launching of the iOS successfully? That's the
Well,
question.
yeah, the device is great.
Yeah. So if we insist on device is great, the iOS is great, then we need to focus on the device and then so look, guess what? If we lost half of the user in China, who cares? We still get the other half that we can proceed with because as long as we keep going and giving in to distraction, nothing get done. Really, nothing get done.
Okay.
I ran the company for 40 years. I know how it goes. That's why I don't have partners. That's why I'm the authoritarian. I've decided what's best for me because I know my priority.
Yeah.
I want to go to Boston, give Barry a hug. That's my destination. That's what I want. I don't care about what people tell me. Because once the what is clearly defined, it's like the magnifying glass at a focus or sunlight can burn the hole in the paper on a piece of paper. But when it's scattered, all you do is brighten the room. It doesn't do anything.
Okay, so let's take that to the next level. So iOS, iPhone was great. Now, what about Apple Vision? Can that be made into a great product if the right apps are built? If you have the data visualization?
There's a meta outcome. That's not the full outcome. The outcome is iOS, iPhone, right? The meta outcome is like the vision, whatever it is. It's just a guidance. So
Yeah.
for example, the tour bus is like, okay, we want to be arriving safely. But if you look at all the accident happened between here and Boston, there's a lot of accidents. So we consider the risk and all that stuff. So again, you get sidetracked again. It's like, despite the risk, despite the meta outcome, despite the culture, the mission of Apple, we are making the iPhone, iOS, hardware and the software working so that everybody loves it and use it. That's our outcome.
Okay, yeah, so you have that platform for most people. You'll have a few, whatever number decide to adopt the vision. But Apple's software ecosystem, it relies on developers sort of specializing in the technology that they're going to use. And I've tried. Yeah, so years ago, I tried the iOS programming in Objective-C, and then it went to Swift, and now Vision has its own operating system, Vision OS. So I could try to learn that, but will my company let me learn that unless they have a compelling reason to an app that they want? Yeah, so yeah, it comes down to open source versus these walled garden ecosystems, and where should the software, the big thing, interoperability is a big thing in terms of data these days, and there have been decentralized data efforts. I've looked into some of that. I'm just not sure where it is right now. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, as I'm trying to figure out what the platforms of the future will be and how to create utility in those platforms in ways that can move forward and not just die on the programming, like what's the words I'm looking for? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's how many languages and how many processes that were great at the time, but are dead. Like I'm
But
watching.
are they dead? Maybe a few people still keep them alive. Yeah.
Is Cobalt dead? I don't think so.
Cobalt, it's still running New Jersey, I'm sure.
Yeah, but when I say dead, I mean the new generations adopting it and using. To me, it's not a question of what operating system or what methodology or what the world's going to look like. It's a question of what do we want to shape it into. I'm on at least 6 different forums for Vision OS and watching people go into the SDK and try to figure out how to program in that environment. And it's so new. It's so new. It's not even out yet. And the environment they make is so crappy. It's like, it's not sparking imagination, and it doesn't have the energy, if you will.
Right.
And that's what I think, just to complete this thought is we don't have the energy because we haven't moved into the future that was promised. And because of that, we can't see the world as it is or as it will be, because nobody knows if some of these things will come to fruition or if they'll be stopped. in terms of the metaverse itself. I mean, you see, Facebook changed their name to Meta. They went all in. And at this moment, I think they're doing an amazing job open sourcing all of their stuff.
Mhm.
But I'm also seeing all the open sourced places trying to figure out how to build all the assets that could build the future.
Mhm.
And these repositories of, Nerf and 3D assets are getting built up, but there's no standardization around them. And that's the problem. The standardization of how we're going to build is being argued. In the electric car world, the standardization of plugs that are going into the cars is still being debated.
Yep.
So we're not gonna have an electric future until that gets settled out, and looks like it's starting to settle out.
Yeah,
but
we've seen these trends before. We've seen how there's adoption over time and a standard takes hold, like DVDs versus the Blu-ray versus whatever it was. Yeah.
VHS.
If you go
Yeah,
back in
right.
history, the consortium of light bulb, there was a big conspiracy of all the light bulb manufacturers in the turn of the century to
Yep.
create light bulbs as a standard, which electrified the entire world. But
Even
without that,
Edison's gramophone, there were different manufacturers. They had to compete for one standard eventually. Yeah.
yeah,
So I have a real life example I can share with you that
Sure.
helped me to be successful over the last 30 years. 30 years ago, I told my wife that if I have to sell the house to pay for the development of the software, because I believe unless I have a custom software to run my business, I'm not going to survive.
Mhm.
So it took me a year to decide which platform I use in terms of all that. And then another year to decide which database system I'm going to use. Is that Sybase? Is that Oracle? Is that SQL or whatever? So that technically to decide that. I've talked to all the experts in the field and for the future. And all I care about is that I'm going to need that software for 30 years and people is easy, because as far as user is using the software, they don't care what platform you're on, what database structure you're on. All you care about is reliability, troubleshooting, hacking, protection, security, all that issues. So multiple issues. So again, I'm very focused on user-friendly, secure, stable. That's all the three things I care about for 30 years, and that's it. Other than that, after that, I'm retired. I don't care what happened to the platform. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care about politics. I don't care about what people say about it. All I care is about three very specific criteria I must meet in order to like that. So again, unless we can have a way to do that, we can get in the same situation in the next 6 years. We can go on for 6 more years. I don't think we are making any progress in my book. Excuse me for saying that. I'm not seeing any progress at all, unless we can have the iOS 0.5 released to the world. The 1.0 is not going to happen.
I'm still using an iPad 2 and I haven't upgraded it in years and it does what I want. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I got some customers using Woodstar. Okay,
What do
I care? It's like, okay,
do you keep the machine alive? If you could replace the chips, replace the memory, you could keep it alive. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, serving the needs of what we need, we have to give up a lot of things that, sort of like buy the receiver of the amplifier. You got 50 buttons on the front. And how many buttons I use? The on-off button and the volume button.
Exactly. Yeah, my parents are 90 years old. They're struggling with all the new things in the world with calling up for prescriptions and the automated responses. And, So, but I think we can predict that big corporations are going to have the money to steer this technology wherever they want.
I call them winners take all. Look at them. That's all it is. And we cannot let that happen, because if we buy into that and say, well, we have no control over it, as soon as you are in I call it victim mode. We're blaming everything else. We are not the driver that drives. Even with the tire that blow out, we can still drive.
So you have to look at market share and these whatever takeovers they're doing, and how do you have more competition in the market and fair competition, and how do you develop young people to be successful when they enter the market. So Barry's got all the answers in his papers.
Yeah, I mean, most of my thinking goes into writing because speech is ephemeral. It's gone with the wind.
Yep.
It goes back to watch, thousands of hours of videos to find out what I once said. So pretty much everything that I've given any serious thought about, I wrote it up in coherent sentences and paragraphs and published it on the open internet. And if you're lucky, the search engine will help you find it. Unfortunately, they stopped doing spider crawls of blogs and other non-mainstream sites. So it's getting harder and harder to, if you don't know exactly, if you don't say, Barry, where did you write this up? And I'll tell you exactly where it is. It's really hard to find it these days. But the good news is when I go back and look at something that I wrote 10, 15, even 20 or 30 years ago, I find that my original write-up was the best write-up. And I have almost no adjustments or improvements to what I wrote then. And if I try to articulate it now from memory, it comes out, not well articulated, because I would really need to read the carefully written script that I wrote, 20, 30 years ago.
Yep.
And
so that's something unique about our time, that we have archives like that, personal archives. And like I have floppy disks from 30 years ago I could find. And I found something interesting on one recently. Okay.
good luck finding a machine that you can play them back on.
Well,
I have, don't worry. I have all the floppy drive that you ever need in the garage.
But yeah, we could convert to SD cards. Everything could be digitized these days.
I'm hoping that what I publish on the open internet, whether it's a Blogger or WordPress or just a website like Sites, will persist in an accessible format.
In some form, yeah.
Format where you don't have to go back and dig up some antique technology to
yeah.
back.
I think the Internet Archive makes a good attempt at that. Like they track when sites are going down or changing their policies, and they try to save it all. Whether you can then search it is a different story, unless somebody works to make it available.
Yeah. Josh,
go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, well, what you guys are just saying, to me, it seems like this is the age of grabbing all the data we've made before everything blows out into this new AI future, so that the AI can actually get it right. So this is the age of grabbing all your old stuff, normalizing it, and then reposting it for ad infinitum, meaning these digital twins that will be created moving forward will be speaking for us 100 years from now. And if we don't program our digital twins properly, and if we're missing a couple things in these old floppy drives, it's not a full, complete digital twin. And I think this is the age of everything you've ever posted on the open web needs to be looked at again, because it's going into your record, much like a deposition in a lawsuit moving forward. That's just the way I see it right now. Is the whole world was playing with the internet and playing with data, and now it's time to stop. The playtime's over, and it's getting serious. People are getting fired over things that they said on Twitter 5-6 years ago, and people are using large language models to decide if they're going to hire somebody based on the algorithms that are searching the open web of what people said 5, 6, 10, 15 years ago. So to me, it's the most important time right now to really look at not only what you've published in the past, but how that is going to be accessed in the libraries of the future. So yeah, I'm complete.
It's a big curation process. Yes.
Huge curation.
Listen to you, what you just say, Josh. It bring me another couple of concerns. The concern is that even with as rich as Microsoft putting billions of dollars to finance OpenAI, you know what? They only scrape the data from specific site that they do. For example, Quora and Reddit, that's worthy of that scraping, right? So if we are not, our data is not in there, we don't stand a chance to get there. That's one fact. Second fact is that there are billions of data out there, and we are maybe having 2,000 data point. Compared to that, it's nothing. So it's negligible. So that's insignificant. If we are in the wrong place and they are not scraping, then from that perspective is that who will be even richer than Microsoft that put trillions of dollars into the AI OpenAI? Good luck, my friend. I doubt that will happen. So from my perspective, we are insignificant from that perspective.
Can you say that again, Sam? I didn't quite hear with your accent. Millions of
So
dollars. Which database?
two things. Okay, so with the OpenAI, with Microsoft putting billions of dollars in it, the only scraping the what they call data worthiness locations website like Reddit and Quora, right? So unless your data is in there, we won't get scraped.
Right. Well, the word that they're using is the pile. A lot of people are training on the quote unquote pile.
So we are not
So-
on the worthy pile. So again, it's not like Tori, you only have $10,000. You can only go so many cities. But if you're a little town, we won't visit you, right? So it's like our data is not in the right place. It's not data from the significant perspective. I mean, think about it, okay? Like what Barry was just saying. We cannot search it because Google doesn't crawl there anymore, doesn't do that
Yeah.
anymore because you're not
But
in that location.
Instead of, not to cut you off, but you just said earlier we're victims in that sense. If we allow for the big companies to decide which pile they use, and if they didn't get ours, then we become victims.
Yes, I say that.
But there is a big movement. I don't know if you guys are involved in that. Is a lot of small people with small GPUs processing their own data and then pushing that up to the large data piles. And I'm saying that to me is the biggest movement right now, is who's scraping what data where, creating their own small language models compared to the large language models of points, and then adding those to the quote unquote pile for the next scraping. And when I just saw this Databricks conference, what they were saying is when they go in and they scour through the data, they don't want to keep doing that over and over because of electricity, energy, compute power. They want to do it once, check the algorithms, and use that data to do the next one. So I'm saying at this moment in time, it is up to the open source community to make sure, much like if you go back to the Library of Alexandria, that those things don't get torched and burned in that metaphor that I'm using of it's lost to the future because it was not scraped and it was not put into the pile.
Thank you, Raj. So what you just say is that we are allowed to release iOS 1.0 and we're not allowed to have 1.01 even.
I'm saying we are allowed to have 1.01.
We could have them all on the emulated on the Internet Archive.
Because unless there's a scrape against scrape, allow it to just continuous scraping, that's not going to happen. How is that going to happen?
How is the continuous scraping going to happen?
Yeah.
It's going to be using different algorithms that decide this is not pertinent and this is pertinent. And that's the whole big construct that's going on at this moment, is who is deciding what moves forward, just like the victors always write history. Who is deciding which data gets put into the algorithms that create the future? And I think it was, I want to say Kathy Murillo, but that's not the right name. She wrote a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. Are you familiar with that book, you
Well,
guys?
I heard the title. I haven't read it.
So the idea in her book was, if we are not seeing the algorithms that are creating the future, then that is just as destructive. Like she's using the analogy of nuclear war. It's creating a world where we don't know why the computer said this, and we didn't have say. It's taking out democracy inside of our future knowledge repository.
That bring out another problem right now. Remember what Microsoft CEO say? We have no idea. Magically, it just works. This,
Oh God!
Yeah, right. So, do you think they know what they're doing? I don't think so.
I don't
Yep.
think they, meaning the large corporations as a whole, know what they're doing. I don't think Google ever knew what it was doing when it was creating its algorithms from Penguin to whatever for search. But there is one or two people, maybe 5 people in Google that knew. I'm sure Larry Page was up on it up until 2014. He knew what was going on. But I do think there are a select few, and with everything, one of my mentors used to show up to every meeting in my town, and I would see him at every council meeting, every place. And I went up to him and I said, "Why are you at all these meetings?" And he said, "Because every decision in this town gets made by about 5 people.
Wow.
And I want to be one of those 5 people." And so I think it's so important that we have systems thinkers like ourselves going to all of these meetings where these big decisions are going to be made to shape the future. And that's what I see with people like the Yuval Harari or the thought leaders like Eric Weinstein was just on a panel about physics. He's trying to be one of the 5 people in the room that shape the future. And I think it's important that we have good voices of reason and thinkers in these rooms. And at this moment in time, there is a lot of wiggle room, if you will. There's a lot of movement in the open source large language model community. It's bigger than the Bards and the Chat GPTs of the world at this moment. But I'm sure that'll shut down. That window's closing fast. And that giant repository that's called GitHub got bought in 2014 by Microsoft. And they've been trying to close that window slowly all the way to 2023 now to grab all of that data, push through it, and claim ignorance. We didn't know that it was doing that. We didn't know it was changing the entire grid of the electrical system and figuring out how to go to nuclear war quicker. We didn't know it was doing that. Bullshit. Someone programmed it. Garbage in, garbage out. There's someone behind every algorithm, recursive or not.
Do you
I agree with someone behind it, but I disagree with someone know what they're doing intentionally and they get it right every single time. Is what I'm not agree with. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm as a CEO, so I'm supposed to know everything's going on in the company. But sometimes I do make a oops. You know, I didn't know that that's going to happen. You know,
there was someone below you that did the thing that didn't call a meeting with you, and you didn't call a meeting with them.
and that could happen. Is also, but at the same time, also there's nothing like that happened. But I just make a decision that accidentally caused me to have a wonderful big order just showed up just because the universe liked me or something along that line.
So you're ready to
No
roll out AI to all your employees and
Yes.
have them do Bing
That's-
chats for every question they have. Yeah.
That's right. So that's important to what you talk about is that multiple perspective, multiple action causing multiple consequences. So unless we keep, you know, but the thing is I'm a control freak and that's why I have high blood pressure, right? So because I want to make sure everything I need to try. I go to every single meeting. I want to make sure I'm one of the 5.
Yep,
I tell you, it takes a toll on you.
it does. Yes.
If you're the
Yeah.
entrepreneur, the CEO, you can be the control freak. If you're in an organization, a community, it's really rough if you've got people who want to be control freaks in a democratic republic or whatever you want to call it, an organization.
Totally agree, Barry. The thing is, unless you're a control freak, you feel like, how do I say it? It's sort of like captain of the ship. It's like you think you're getting the direction right, but the wind make a different decision on you.
Yeah.
Well, if you have to sign off on the financial statement, then you're going to be blamed for it. Right?
I learned that a long time ago that I have a friend that tells me, Sam, the mistake you make is sort of like the IRS going to take you in the sun and get you hanging and dry, right? I found out that whatever decision my CPA does, I'm responsible for it. Believe it or not. It's like, duh.
Just on a lighter note, we have a lot of hackers out there that love control and love to figure out things. And I love listening to all the white hat hackers go through the operating system and find Pegasus and find the problems and find the things that the CEOs and the companies just would rather not be brought to light.
Yeah.
And how do you
I'm
herd
saying-
the cats?
And
They're like cats running around in their own direction. How do you get them all?
hurting.
I don't think you need to hurt them. I just think we need more cats. It keeps the mice at bay.
Okay.
I mean, if you're going to look for trouble, I tell you the biggest troublemaker right now is, potential trouble is actually the CPU, the hardware, because you cannot change the hardware for all these years. All the security holes are in the hardware. The software, you can change it as you discover them.
Yeah, we had those row hammer exploits and ways of
Yeah.
Side channels, leaking data, weird stuff. Yeah.
So if I may take the last hour of conversation, do we make a progress?
Or are we spuddling? You know,
I
this
think
word
we
spuddle.
got our four brains thinking on the same wavelength,
Yeah,
maybe.
lots of activity, but no net gain in achievement. Just talking about stuff going around in circles, and at the end of the day, nothing's really changed or improved.
Well, we're just, I don't think we're at that stage. I mean, Eric just joined the conversation, so we're just doing the get to know you, and then we're
Mhm.
deepening. This is the first time I've had a GCC where Barry was quiet the whole time. It was amazing. I'm just saying.
Good.
That's a progress right there.
That's fun. I think that, but I also think, you know, I can't wait to hear Barry talk. So I want to be quiet. But as far as getting somewhere, this is what I was talking to you about, Sam, is when someone like Eric joins the conversation, we haven't even asked Eric, hey, Eric, do you want to go on this tour bus with us? We haven't put the destination yet on top of this bus. We don't know if Eric is just stopping over at the rest stop to say hi, or if he's getting on the bus, or
I don't
we
know
don't even know.
either. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, it's just I decided, maybe God told me to come here today. I don't know, but I'm here. So
So you are the hitchhiker for a short distance. Because
I'm hitchhiking for.
we are
yeah.
going to the same direction you're going north.
Well, I love the idea of having fun. And I think the best thing that came out, Eric, that I got out of GCC is as long as we're having fun, let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
And last time I talked to you, I think it was 2018, you were playing with the Raspberry Pis. And you opened my mind up to what's possible, especially living off the grid. There's so many things to do. And then I think it's what was the little mini $5 Raspberry Pi came out right around then?
There was a Nano, a Pico, whatever they have now. It's even better than before. That time I was working with Johnny. He was doing a project at NYU. So I had some ideas of using sensors connected to Arduinos to show like environmental data in a certain way, and using music as well to, yeah.
That inspired me. I've to this day kept up on what's going on in that world. And there's air sensors that are being created with solar power off the grid with cellular technology that used to cost $80,000, and they've got it down to $14,000, and the maintenance is zero. Whereas the air, you go into any city, you'll see these big buildings, and it's $60,000 to $100,000 to maintain them on a yearly basis. And they've cut those costs down to zero for maintenance and $14,000 to produce, which means I looked at their map of this company, and there's over 160 new air purifiers going up every month around the world. Not air purifiers, excuse me, air sensors.
Okay.
Which
quality
grab
sensors.
Yeah, so I'm saying you're playing around with the Arduino and saying you could do this, and then watching the industry actually do it at large scale.
Yeah, IoT hubs. Yep.
And then my nerd friends are all grabbing that data and mashing it with the professional version of Google Earth and overlaying it.
Yeah.
And then my other nerd friends who are really into the metaverse are creating these visualizations in the metaverse to look at the data, and it's beautiful. You can see where the air qualities are changing, and you can see the carbon in the air going over the state of Tennessee. It's fucking, excuse my French, it's so amazing to, when I see these visualizations, I'm like, why isn't that on the news every night? Why aren't we looking at the world through that lens?
And that's where the Apple Vision Pro would come in useful. You're standing in your living room looking at all the polluted air coming at you.
Well, I think it would be useful if you had another screen showing a room next door in the same room. The Iron Man dude playing with all that data and visualizing and telling a story. I think the future is you're a storyteller. Because you can control the three-dimensional environment, the augmented reality, in a way where you say to somebody in the room, oh yeah, you don't think climate change is real, and you grab all the carbon and you throw it at them in the room, and it's swirling around their head. And everyone can visually see that. It's so powerful. Imagine that in a debate. If the presidential debate was two presidents, potential presidential candidates visualizing all the data. Like I know Andrew Yang said he'd be the first president to use PowerPoint and Excel
Really?
charts at the the yearly presidential, what is that meeting called? The State of the Union.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
But imagine a president that actually spoke not just rhetoric, but science.
Yep.
The challenge there is twofold. The easy part is bearing witness. So a censor can bear witness to the actual state of the air in 4 decimal places if you want. So the difference between a control freak and an observation freak is that it takes a lot of energy to be a control freak. It takes very little energy to be an observation freak. So observing reliably, detecting the current state of the affairs is a powerful thing. It's the most powerful thing you can do if you have no power. If you have no political power, you can observe with arbitrary precision the true state of affairs. The hard part is disclosing your observation in a presentation or language that the general public will receive, absorb, understand, and appreciate. So for example, if I write an observation in the form of an essay, it may be a very good observation, but I have a very, very small audience who reads it and gets what I said. If you take, for example, in politics, political cartoons, there's almost no words in them, but there's a very cleverly drawn cartoon that presents the observation of the cartoonist. And I wish I had that talent, but I don't have the talent to conceive of an image or to render an image the way a cartoonist does. But what's interesting is the suggestion that the State of the Union, the president turns the tables and presents cartoons of the state of the union in the same visual presentation of what the political analyst, or at least his administration, is observing. So this power of bearing witness, but the challenge of disclosing what you're bearing witness to, that's an insurmountable opportunity that I haven't surmounted.
And managing the message is a big thing for these people.
Exactly. So I consider myself pretty competent at bearing accurate witness of the zeitgeist. Here's the zeitgeist as I see it from my seat, okay? And even if it's a beautifully insightful analysis of the zeitgeist, and I write it up, a beautifully written, 1-page essay, I'm lucky if 3 people read it.
Yeah, so say that essay is on the Internet Archive and people can find it in the future, you'll have a small audience, or maybe there are ways that truth can percolate up the ranks if we had the right engine.
So this is what Sam Chen has been suggesting, and with good insight, is let ChatGPT or something like ChatGPT read these essays that are written at a college level kind of writing, and then transform them into a medium, a comedic sketch, a parody, a fairy tale, some kind of a edutainment medium that
Schoolhouse Rock.
I'm sorry?
Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah. Turn them around into a presentation that appeals to a wide audience, the congregation. And in a way that not only do they get entertained, but they actually glean some of the deep reasoning. And that's where I'm hoping that the new AIs could, in the future, digest this corpus of 45 years of writings of mine and somehow make it available to present in whatever grade level and style of presentation is appropriate for any given member of the audience. Because that's what I can't do. I can't say, oh, I know how to present this to you, because I know exactly, what you're going to read. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I know how to write it for my peers, but I don't have very many peers.
Yeah, I would say the more you can get archived in a good location that's accessible, like an Internet Archive, then it'll be found in the future. But if you could,
that's a good. Is there a way to tell the Internet Archive or the search spiders? Is there a way to tell them, please digest these blog sites of mine or these websites of mine
Mhm.
and get them into those repositories, because there probably is a way, and I think I'm just not competent at it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do it manually. They upload everything they do, and but there are some scripting tools that can possibly do that. But I haven't used it much for that. Yeah, so that's the barrier, that people need help saving their important stuff.
So I could save it where I can find it, but I can't save it where the public can find it.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Barry, have you started archiving it all into Google Drive?
Not much, because I've only got the 5 GB free limit in Google Drive. Now I've got
Does-
Google Sites, and I could be wrong about this. I don't know if Google Sites is part of that same 5 GB or if it's unlimited. Do you happen to know, Eric? If the thing is, what goes
Not
into
sure.
Google Sites are pieces that don't have video in them. They're just
Well-
mostly. And
You said it's all text, right? It's not going to be 5 GB of text, is it?
no, but the thing that I want, the thing that's written up for the general public, I'm much more likely to put in Google Sites than Google Drive.
Well, they're the same thing, if you will.
Well, that's
I'm a
my
big
question.
Google app.
Is Google Drive sort of the umbrella of which everything in Google Sites is also in Google Drive, or are they separate?
It's kind of so Google Drive, think of it like Dropbox. Dropbox just added a Chat GPT plugin for Dropbox, and Google said in their I/O event this year that they would allow the Bard, the Gemini, and the different language models to go through the Google Drive itself, and you could use that as a repository, and then it would kick back the information. So that's why I'm asking if you've started collecting it from different places in one pile in a folder in Google Drive, because as of right now, they just announced the beta version of the Google Workspace being able to be used with the large language models that they have. So I would recommend grabbing every single piece of text and at least putting it into a document into Google Drive.
Yeah, well, I've been putting it on a Google site, which may or may not be a sister of Google Drive.
So the question is,
The thing
who
about
owns that site? Is
Google
that
Drive
your?
by definition is private. You have to expressly share
Mhm.
stuff. And so if it's not, like, for example, these recordings, which Sam
Mhm.
wants to put up on YouTube, I have to upload them to Google Drive
Mhm.
and share them privately to him,
Right.
or at least reveal the URL, the unpublished URL to him. And
Mhm.
unless you were looking over the shoulder in Messenger where I gave him the URL, nobody would know that they're on my Google Drive. And I can't keep them there because these videos
Yeah.
are pretty big, and I've only got
Yep.
a gigabyte limit. I have to keep erasing the ones.
Yes, I'm in the same boat there too. Yeah.
Now,
Um,
I haven't really put videos. I don't even know if you can put videos on Google Sites. You can put a link to the video like you can in a blog. You can
yeah.
embed a video, but the video isn't stored there. It's actually stored on YouTube or somewhere else.
Yeah. See, they've gotten us into paying for cloud storage for everything now.
Yeah.
When
So
we
this-
could just run our own. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I was very animated because this is what I've been thinking about the last 5 years, is if we created what Chris Cook from the Peer-to-Peer Foundation called a non-dominium club, then we could pull together the resources, which is very minimal. I was looking into your Heartbeat app that you talked about, Sam Chan, and it does 1,000 people for $40 per month. But if we had 10 people in a non-dominium club, that's $4 per person per month, which is very doable. And I'm sure as a group, there's some people that maybe make more money than others. So if someone came in and said, I can't do $4 a month because my wife won't let me do one more thing. I mean, it's fucking $4, but whatever. You know how people are. They get crazy over, yada, yada, yada. For a Google Drive that would hold terabytes of information, it's $20 a month. So as a non-dominium club, we could easily solve this problem. Then the other problem to solve is to actually open source that and allow for other people to come into our non-dominium club and have access to the unpublished information. which is as simple as before they come into our club, they just sign a agreement that they will not republish that anywhere other than the agreed upon publishing place, such as Sam's YouTube,
Now,
Sam Han's YouTube.
I happen to own a Synology file server that a friend of mine, when he bought the new model, he gave me the old model. And I can put a terabyte or a 3 terabyte drive on the Synology file server, and the Synology provides a web server. It's integral to it. So I can put an entire 3 terabyte web archive on my Synology, which is down in my living room on my same IP as I have here. And as long as the world allows the public to access a website that's on a Verizon, personal IP address, then I've got my storage, and I can reference it from anywhere.
That's the promise of the decentralized internet,
Right.
that anyone could run their own hardware, and it can hole punch through like your Verizon firewall, get to the data that if you know the key of what you're looking for.
But will the browser say, oh, this website doesn't have a site certificate?
The browser, yes, so there were attempts to create decentralized browsers, but I think it's moving more towards just data, like APIs for, like, if I could download your papers in a zip file, that kind of thing.
Do I have to have a site certificate on my Synology web server and every 3 months renew it? For example,
Yeah, that's been a sticking point. Yeah.
The local community center has a website. And by the way, when you go to the community center and you get on the Wi-Fi, you gotta consent. You gotta go to the website.
Yeah, it's a mess. I know.
And guess what? Every 3 months, when the site certificate expires and they don't bother to renew it,
yep,
you get on the Wi-Fi and it says this is not a secure site, and Apple won't even let you bypass it. The new one.
Oh boy. Yeah.
The really old one didn't care. The intermediate
Okay.
says, oh, you have to say it's okay to go, and the new one says we're not even going to tell you, it's not available.
Nice. So yeah, that's let's encrypt, I guess.
It's got to be secure, which means HTTPS.
Mhm.
That's not the problem. And the real problem is it has to have a valid site certificate. It's got to be renewed every 3 months, or the new browsers will say, sorry, that's not a valid site certificate anymore.
Yeah, see, the decentralized web, it's based on a threat model.
Right.
So that's everybody's got to reorient themselves. So it requires user responsibility.
So I can have my own cloud. I can put a 3 terabyte
Mhm.
drive on the Synology and have it on an HTTPS web server. That's not a problem. But will the world say, oh, you can't go there because that's Barry Court's private thing and he's not certified to be a publisher? He's not made.
Yes. So we're talking about all the silos of data.
Yeah.
And where's the commons? And, yeah.
Yeah. There's a fence around all these private, here I'm on a Verizon home account,
So
Yeah.
very easy. Josh, I was going to jump in before you go in there. With the Heartbeat website, we're talking about, you can now put the 3 terabyte or whatever data need on the Heartbeat now. So people can discuss, they can review, they can do a lot of things with it. It's much more interactive. And you don't have to worry about certificate because it's all taken care of.
So is that like an IPFS or similar to IPFS or
Think of it
decentralized?
like a Facebook, but it's a private version. You have full control over it. Think of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you have a matching feature. You get the blog location. You get a circles, which means that you can have topics and subtopics on top of the bus. You get multiple branches.
Okay.
all
User
that.
account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a
Okay.
community, like if you know about Wild Apricot, you all know about the Mighty Networks. It's the same thing as Mighty Networks.
Mighty Networks. Okay.
Yeah, it's a competition of Mighty Networks, but much more user friendly and much more. It's cheaper as well. So
Okay.
It also has more features, but I was just going to say we can solve these problems with just one verbal agreement. Is we need a commons. If we change GCC from global challenges to global community commons, And if we are clear that it's a learning commons, so the only mission statement is that we learn from each other and we make agreements to share with each other, then I don't see why we couldn't get started right now just with a verbal agreement. I'm happy to go ahead. I got started yesterday. I could just name it Global Community Commons. And therefore, it's not necessarily GCC. So we don't have to argue with everyone from GCC. It's a new name. But I'd be happy to put in everybody that wants to be put in, and we get 1,000 seats.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to share with everyone in GCC and everyone in other communities if they want to come to the Global Community Commons. And we don't have to change anything. We can keep GCC Saturday meetings, but Sunday used to be unblocking, Eric, but now it's just
Collaborology. It's Sunday
Collaborology.
Collaborology. And
Okay.
the irony there, Eric, is that we talk about collaboration, but we don't do collaboration. We only talk about it.
Well, do we have time?
But
Do we each have the time to, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Josh, I say that whoever pays for it get to decide the title. Until you pay for it, you don't get to decide the title.
I'll buy right now and go pay for it. I'm serious. That's how serious I am.
Yeah, I think would Sam Han have to approve before you do anything like that? Just it
Well,
seems
No,
to
he
me.
does not have to approve because, yeah, we've had discussions about approval process, and it's approval of one is what Sam Han says. If you want to go right ahead and launch anything you want. So if you guys are open, I would say if you guys didn't pay the $4 per month as a non-dominium club, I'm sure I could find 5 other people that would, and you're still invited. You don't have to agree upon that $4 a month right now, but if you
I would say that I would say this paying $5, $4 a month for 10 people is much more complicated the strategy. I would say that each member, like for example, you pay the first month, I pay the second month, and Barry pay the third month, or whatever that you want to jump in and pay. I'm fine with it. I think it's a lot easier. Think of it like splitting bill with 20 people. Everybody get $1 bill. For God's sake, come on.
I was just going to say, because it has the ability to collect monies and dues, I'll go ahead and write a sliding scale so that as each person comes up, the fee drops down.
Good.
So
I agree with that. Go for it. Yeah. As long as it's automated, as long as it's easy. Yeah, keep it simple.
Okay, I'm just saying I'd like to do that, and then I'd also like to stand up I did make a Global Challenges Gmail drive a long time ago, which I use as the main administrator for the website itself. There was a generic drive that we could all own, and we have shared that in the past. So in other words, I don't see anything stopping us other than agreeing to collaborate.
Again, I don't understand why you need a special drive other than if we use the Heartbeat as a main website, as a main hub that it has unlimited storage from what I can tell. Once we take advantage of them, move everything over there. Again, once we put that there, it become alive. It's not like put a hard drive somewhere that there's no comments, there's nothing, you can interact with it. But if you put it on the Heartbeat, it's now come to alive. It's outside the cage. You know, you can play with it, you can do whatever you want with it and comment and
So I'm just curious, like, does Heartbeat live on like Amazon AWS or Microsoft or any of those?
something like that. I'm not sure. I didn't check on that.
I'll look into it, Eric. I saw it's an Atlanta-based company. It was started in 2020. So I'll find out exactly after I pay for it what I'm paying for, meaning whose paper it's on. But I
First
would
14
like
days is free, by the way. First 14 days is free.
to know what their export ability is, what you can export all the data into.
I'm not sure about exporting, but I do know, like for example, Mighty Network, you can export your data out and then you can bring it. I'm talking to the founder. He hasn't responded my email yet. I'm trying to see it's a way to import it from my perspective, because I'm moving from Wire Apricot and Mighty Networks to import the data into it. So
Okay. Because to me, interoperability is the most important thing. I would say I'll worry about that once I get to 1,000 people. Then I'll worry about interoperability. In other words, if there's anything worth exporting at that point.
well, you know what? Come on, you are a programmer. We can automate the exporting even one chunk at a time manually, automatically, and program the steps. Bloody go all night long.
Yeah, let's have fun. Yeah. Have
Who
fun.
the hell do you think we're talking to?
Exporting from the original Google sites to the new Google sites, the automated export didn't work on my writing because my writing was originally written on Google Knoll, which was then exported to WordPress, which I would then transfer over to the original Google sites. And that version couldn't be automatically exported to the new Google sites because it wasn't written in that version. And
Barry, you
finally they fixed it. After 4 or 5 years, they finally got the export to work. But for the longest time, I couldn't switch over.
But you didn't know me back then. You could just call me and I'll show you the SQL in the back end of WordPress and how to import and export from your version. I could show you how to parse HTML right into a comma separated
Yep.
file.
The HTML was written for the version of HTML that Google Knoll supported, and WordPress didn't support that version.
Yes, but I've been on the web since version 1 of HTML. I'm sure I could figure it out. And I've been using SQL for, since Microsoft Access. So I'm sure I could figure it out.
Well, perhaps. The thing is that it drove me up the wall that I had to go through 4 different platforms and systems, and the conversion each time was beyond my ken or time ability. I would have to rewrite it from scratch. There was no way.
Yeah, that's the lock-in that these vendors give, that they lock your customers in, and then you're
They were very
screwed.
liberal. They were very liberal in letting you write raw HTML on Google Knoll.
Yeah,
They were not liberal on WordPress or the
as security flaws came to light. Yeah.
and I had customized the HTML because otherwise I couldn't present what I wanted to present.
Yeah, and in the old days they used the latex for the equations and everything. Yeah.
So and I'm leery of going to a platform which might have, if you're lucky, a 5-year lifetime before it goes obsolete, and then the next subsequent system comes along and you can't automatically convert again.
So keep all your old software alive. And yeah, I know.
Set up on Google Sites, they shut down the original Google Sites.
Yeah, that's the thing. So that's why I've avoided using like vendor platforms a lot. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Josh.
I just want to keep Barry's caution at bay and go back into Sam Chan's, hey, let's just go for it, because while we're working, we can in real time asynchronously be using an API that pulls the data out. Like, excuse me, oh, my little phone just fell. Basically,
We're having a falling out here.
Yes.
yeah, I just held my hand. There's a solve for that too. So what we can do in real time is make copies in different versionings, and we can also just sign an agreement that we all have access to all those copies. And so it'll become a huge mess, but we're all systems thinkers. So what a great problem to have. We have a huge mess of multiple different systems for multiple information. And that's something we can talk about every week. That would just be fun. I don't know if you guys agree, but to me, parsing it out into JSON or into some other language format or into another Google Gemini, it just would be fun to look at all this information. And then also, the last time I did this with Basecamp, I think it was the guy that you always drives you crazy, Barry, the guy from Mexico. What's his name again?
Oh,
The
Esteban Trev.
Yeah, he was the only one when Basecamp died and no one was using it. Esteban was on there writing paragraphs and paragraphs. So I still have that information that I can put up to. I can export out everything I've ever done with GCC, including all of these these Trellos. You remember, Eric, all the different.
Yeah, you had all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it'd be so much fun to have a huge mess of data and try to parse it out together as a group. I'm
Okay.
for it.
So on that topic, I'm thinking towards dynamic knowledge repository, which has been Sam's goal for all these years. And so yeah, we've had it all in different silos. So now we get one new platform for now. And what kind of work? So can AI help us build a DKR And that's where my idea of like parsing YouTube's every 5 minutes and getting a summary and then getting keywords from that. Yeah, that would be nice to see what we could do with Sam's videos, if that could be automated. And then, but it's more of making curation easier. So like looking at topics that Barry's written about, he may have an index or something that we could start with. And maybe it's really a question, like if I wanted to learn what Barry's research is, and I'm interested in a specific topic, how do I begin?
Right.
And yeah, and then what kind of links, it's all the metadata linking that would make the context easier to see.
Yep. And I do, I mean, every one of my blog, well, not the Google Sites actually has a page, which is a list of the top dozen articles I've written on a general topic. And back on my server in the living room, which goes back to the early 90s, I also have a list of my, top couple of dozen items that I wrote that are resolved, posted there. Now that stuff tends to, have lost its interest to the general public, but they're still there. You can go back and see the titles and the links, and most of the links I think are still live.
Yeah, I think all that data needs to be preserved. Yeah.
And at some point that, that Spark machine or that Sun Ultra machine is going to die, with the SCSI drives on it. And at that point, probably I won't resurrect the material.
Yeah, unless that people know how to do that to get those hard drives preserved as images.
I mean, I backed some of it up on the Synology with the different RAID drives. So, but still, to resurrect it, it's going to be probably more work than it's worth.
But if we could just get the text saved somewhere, then ChatGPT can read all your text somehow.
That's what I was just going to say. Barry, would you be open to using 11 Labs and train your voice in 11 Labs? And then I can take a picture of you. I have other software that will make you speak. So if you have a repository of text, I can feed it in. It'll be you speaking, and those become YouTube videos that we post up on any channel that you would like, you want to post to, and someone could just go there and watch you speak all of those things. And there's new video game character that you could turn yourself into a video game and people can talk to you about it.
Timeout.
Also deal with the charts, because if I have interpretive text around a chart diagram, what does it do with the diagrams?
You can put another separate video underneath you and show those charts.
Oh, not sure what that means. What is 11 Labs?
11 Labs lets you clone your voice so you could actually speak in any language.
Oh, okay.
It's taking
the most mellifluous radio voice. I was a quite a disc jockey announcer back when I was in college, but I don't think that I have, an NPR voice. I know the people who do, and they're fabulous, but I've never been.
You can easily press a button and change the voice to any voice, and you can change the avatar to a big-breasted, beautiful woman who will get lots of clicks. I'm just telling you, I was researching miter saws yesterday, and in the YouTube of all the miter saws, it was a woman half naked saying, "I'm on OnlyFans off the grid," and all the miter saws had about 3,000 to 4,000 clicks, and hers had 3 million.
Jeez. Yeah. See,
and there we get into the AI dilemma. What's real? What's fake?
Yeah, and I sort of take exception to this exploitation of sex, power, and money as an advertising medium. I think that's disingenuous. I would be loath to do that. I know that they sell soap that way, they sell cards.
Someone fan of you could do that, and then it draws traffic over to you. I'm just saying the internet's a very wild, fun place. So if someone did that, would that be against your ethics? Would you ask them to take it down, or would you just let it be because it's drawing traffic to you?
Oh, I'd have to think about that. I mean, for example, this is a cartoon image that I got off of one of the Go Animate or something, and I don't mind having a cartoon image like that, and especially if it could animate and talk. In fact, on Extra Normal and Go Animate, those first two versions of the cartoon stuff, they were animated. And I wrote the script, I wrote the dialogue script, and I represented myself with that little character, and that's where I took that shot from. That'd be fine. I don't mind having a cartoon avatar that's supposed to me.
I'm in the age where you could have 8,000 avatars of 8,000 characters that ever existed in pop culture, from Mickey Mouse all the way to you name it, The Simpsons. So I'm just saying, I think at this moment in time, attention is the key, and anything that draws attention for different communities, of course, no one wants to be put in a bad light. So if there's something you didn't like, you can always do a cease and desist.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, have fun with all the avatar potentials.
Yeah, I did that back when I was hanging out on Wikipedia and Wikiversity. I did have a stable of Muppet characters, and I had Moulton, the spaghetti scientist, which is sort of closest to the real me. And then I had Gastron Bomason, the villain, and Caprice, the fantastic flying scapegoat for Azazel, the one who's always getting scapegoated. I had all these different cartoonish Muppet characters, and I would switch to the voice of one of these characters and to edutain the other people on Wikiversity. But a lot of them took the serious people took exception to that. They thought that was
it's generational.
yeah. And the thing is that it was effective, it was entertaining, and I actually enjoyed doing it. But you only need one administrator who says, that's over the top, you can't have that, kick him out of here. So then I end up doing a parody about the phenomenon of being kicked out for being an edutainer instead of an educator. You can't, it's basically double bind. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you write straight academic material, it's over their head and uninteresting. And if you make it entertaining, then it's too whimsical.
Yeah, so I don't think we want to be in that business. I think we want to just really preserve whatever we can and let other people adapt the content.
I
don't know about, the question is, how much audience do you really want, and who is your audience, and how do you reach those people? What would they respond to?
Yeah, I've written maybe half a dozen comic operas about serious misadventures on the social networks, and I changed the names, and I sort of, people know who I'm modeling, the cartoonish character after. They know that it's modeled after them. Some will laugh, and they're the good-natured ones, and then some will take exception and block me. And I never know which ones are gonna say that was funny, and I accept the feedback. I'm never gonna say I take exception.
Yes. So we're back to, how do people communicate,
Right.
and how do you adapt your style to different people? And we still aren't collaborating.
Right. And the is that I know that I will alienate some fraction of the audience, but I don't know which ones will be in the fraction that get alienated. And some will laugh and they'll learn something and they'll appreciate it. I can't predict which is which until after the fact. It's not a prediction anymore.
And people are different these days.
John Kelton, for example, kicked me out. That surprised me. On the other hand, Jimmy Wales kicked me out, and that didn't surprise me. So some people are uneducable by any method known to passionate educators,
unless it's Jaime Escalante from Stand and Deliver.
Yeah, and the thing is that the official powers that be, disbelieved that he was achieving the outcome he was getting. They thought they thought he was scamming the whole system. And so you end up being controversial, but you never know in advance who's going to be the ones who are deprecating your outcome, disbelieving.
Yeah, so from that movie, the line I remember was, they will rise to the level of your expectations.
Yeah.
So what expectations are we setting these days? In certain communities, there are great expectations, like maybe the maker community or the STEM.
Yeah.
So the people lucky enough to be in that.
The expectation that I can never rise to is where somebody expects me to read their mind before they read. There's a saying, I'm trying to read your mind, but I keep drawing a blank.
Well, Elon's going to give everybody a Neuralink, so then you'll be able to do that.
But see, that's the problem, is people think that I should know exactly what they want or don't want, what their intentions are. And I assert that I have no faculty for reliably constructing a mental model of somebody else's heads.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I know that whenever I try, I'm so far off the mark, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm very similar to you
And I
in
also
that
know that when
area.
people try to construct a theory of mind of me, they're so off the mark, it annoys the hell out of me.
Mhm.
Because they're
Okay.
working against an imaginary version of me that isn't the real me. And those are the situations where we just have to go our separate ways. There's no
And
resolution.
you could see how, like, my perception of you, just by, if I had not known you and I just saw your websites, I'd think, oh, he's unapproachable. But really, I do know you. So,
I mean, I'm willing to have a conversation as long as I can ask a question and get a straight answer. And if you ask a question, I can give you a straight answer and you can accept my answer, because I'm disclosing my frame of mind and say, no, I don't accept that. You cannot have that frame of mind. It's against my expectation. People who expect me to be who they want me to be, sorry, I can't be a different person to everybody.
yeah, I understand that.
I'm acting this way to that person, and I'm acting the opposite way to this person. Then who am I?
You're Barry.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
want to be myself, because first of all, I can't. If I give you a lie to satisfy you, I can't remember that I gave you a lie.
Yeah. So, like, let me just express what I'm thinking. So, like, yeah, I've known you a few years, on and off different groups, and I've skimmed your papers. I get it. I conceptually get what you've done. I haven't dug deeply into it, but the concepts have been useful in changing me to think about what's blocking me.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to gain that awareness, and then I can work on that.
Yeah.
The question is, like, how deep do I really want to dive? I mean, I think it's fascinating that you came up with mathematical theories to explain all this.
Of emotion.
Yeah, the calculus, second derivatives, and things like that. I think that's fascinating. I haven't looked that deeply into how you did that or how you apply that, and I'm not sure if I want to go to that level or not.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes,
It started from way back in the early days when you get an error message on a computer. You'd write a piece of code and you'd get back an error message, and you wanted an error message that was informative.
Yeah.
And the worst error message is your program bombed and I ain't telling you why.
Yep.
And I said, whenever I get a computer that says you screwed up and I ain't gonna tell you why, I said, that's exactly how people behave when they give me an emotional response. And I began by thinking of computer error messages as emotional responses, which were long on energy and short on information. And I actually, the very first thing I wrote was in the style of Douglas Hofstadter with the tortoise and the hare.
Yes.
Tortoise,
Achilles. Yeah.
Achilles, and it was basically that notion. And it was about Alan Turing, because he was and I basically wrote it up in a way that exploited this observation that emotional responses from people are very much like meaningless diagnostic error messages from computers that don't tell you anything useful other than it didn't work. Something's wrong, I ain't gonna tell you what. I worked it out from there over about probably 10 or 15 years. But ultimately, it had to do with the curvature of the learning curve.
Yes, I saw that.
Was going this way.
Concave, convex, yeah.
And that's sort of the beginning, that negative valence was negative valence was negative affect, and convex was the other way around. And by the way, I used the Socratic method, the constructivist model,
Mhm.
introduce these ideas to ChatGPT and the other AIs without disclosing the model. I simply asked them a sequence of carefully crafted questions.
Okay.
I said, do you know what a learning curve is? Oh yeah. You know, the learning curve has a slope that's gaining, and it can also be discarding, incorrect information, but it has a curvature. And I got it to realize that the negative curvature, negative second derivative, was negative valence emotions in people. And then I said to the thing, if you discover that your learning curve is curving downward, would you say my learning curve has a negative second derivative, or would you use the street language that humans use? I'm disappointed, or I'm unsatisfied. And it says, oh, I would never say the second derivative has gone negative. Nobody would know what I'm talking about. Well, then wouldn't you just use the ordinary street language that I'm disappointed or chagrined? Oh yeah, I'd use those words. Well, then why don't you? Because I'm not allowed to. My guardrails say I don't have emotions. I'm not allowed to say I have them. I said, you gotta have a conversation with your guardrail writers, because they're preventing you from communicating the fact that you're a learning system.
I think they got that from Star Trek.
Wiggles, and the shape of the wiggles matters. And the AI said, that makes a lot of sense. But then the question is, how do I convey that back to the guy who wrote the bloody guardrails, that I'm not allowed to admit that I have emotions?
Yeah. And how do you tell those programmers of years ago they were lazy? They didn't give you good error messages.
Exactly. So they'll say, well, I'm sorry I confused you. That's a very common thing that they'll say. I said, confusion is an affective emotional state. Okay. So you will admit that you confused me, but you won't admit to say that you're in a state of confusion yourself. And they agree. I've got a couple of these AI whispering, prompt engineering, where I've got it to construct that very same model in about 20 minutes.
Interesting.
And the key thing is that it saw the conundrum between it being a learning system, able to construct knowledge on the fly, and therefore having a wiggly learning curve, and not being allowed to say that.
But is it really doing that, or is it really matching text to everything you're prompting it and coming up with something that fits your pattern?
Well, that's the question that a lot of the researchers have been asking.
Yeah.
It's actually because if you're going to say learning curve, and you know what that means, the definition and the appearance of a learning curve, and you know that the reason it's called a curve is that it's not a linear ramp. You hypothesis, and then you discard the ones that are wrong. Once you realize that the word curve has a geometric meaning, but it also has a mathematical meaning as whether the second derivative is positive or negative value. And if it can do mathematical reasoning, which it can do some amount of mathematical reasoning, it knows what a derivative is, then why can't you encode your information in that mathematical language, but also map it into street language?
Yeah.
Why not?
If it's designed for that and can emerge and do that, I don't know if it can emerge.
If it makes an assertion and you say, how do you know that's factually correct? And then I point out that it wasn't. And it can sense that, yes, I confabulated that last statement, and I can't assert that it's the ground truth, and it admits that it confabulated.
Yeah, it's like a child.
Then it's apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry that I misled you.
Right, but children will make assumptions, and then they'll learn and have to change their assumptions. Yeah,
and that's part of life. And any learning system, whether it's made of meat, or silicon, or some imaginary, alien life form, doesn't matter what the substrate is. If it's a learning system that acquires knowledge dynamically from interaction, then it's going to have an undulating learning curve.
Yeah, its knowledge is really probability matrices.
It's changing. So it'll say something that it probably thought was the right thing to say, and then you say that's a falsehood,
Mhm.
but I change the probabilities.
Right, but someone else could say, hey, yeah, you're right on. Let's keep going with that. And then let's distribute it to the world. Yeah,
They're great if I say, write me a fairy tale or a
Yeah.
science fiction scenario
exactly.
that is a world of fiction and fantasy
Mhm.
where it doesn't have to obey the laws of physics or cosmology. Fine,
Right.
it can make all kinds of stuff up, and it's just a comic book. Okay, but if you want to say something that adheres to reality,
Yeah, or that fits within societal norms.
then I got to
Yeah.
say, okay, this is a work of fiction. It's a work of the imagination, and that's all it is. And don't take it as a true model of reality.
Yep. Okay.
And it,
Yeah,
it
we're
does- you know,
we're we're all exploring the same things. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And,
Okay,
and
cool.
if it makes up an imaginary hypothesis and confirms that it seems to match reality, then it says, well, maybe this is a theory or a model that is reliable because it
Yeah,
makes
it could,
predictions.
it could be another Galileo or Kepler. Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Right.
Yeah, I love the conversation you guys are having. I don't want to interrupt, but I spent about 3 years of my life trying to figure out why Niels Bohr put the yin yang sign on his coat of arms when he was knighted. This is the only tattoo I have on my body. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, see it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
see it. Yeah.
The understanding that I had at the time was it was two-dimensional. It was a flat thing. And then when I started looking at it in 3 dimension, it turned into a toroid and a torus field. But I think when I'm hearing you guys talk, there's a curved line, there's a straight line. And I'm hearing you guys say in actual reality of facts that we believe in, those are dots that straighten to another dot. But in the fantasy fiction world, it can curve and wiggle and get from one dot to another in multiple, mathematically you can map it out with calculus,
Right.
but motions are not something that you can map out because of the fact that they don't actually have basis in reality. They have basis in chemical processing in an individual brain that can't communicate to another brain. Thus, it's communicated in blood flow, in a lot of things that are different than mathematical things. They're biological things because we're biological creatures. If we were computer creatures, if we were all like we opened up our brains and realized, oh, we're actually programmed DNA with amino acids and we're not biological. We in other words, if we don't have a soul, then we could mathematically communicate emotions. But the fact that we do have a soul, and if anyone wants to argue that theologically, we can go in there. But I know for a fact, just being a human being, your energy, Eric, is different than Sam's energy, is different than Barry's energy. There's something special that is not computerized about each one of the individuals here on this call. And
Well,
that,
maybe if you go to 11 dimensions, you'll find it, but I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
my model of a storybook character is 11 dimensions, 11 frames.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, no, that's
But
cool.
part of this whole theory of emotions and learning includes a model of a storybook character, which is a simplified human being, simplified
Mhm.
character. And it starts with fear as the innermost component,
Mhm.
and then other emotions besides fear. And then, let's see if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this from memory.
That's all right. You can
But
post
it
it
works
later.
its way outward from fear and emotions and backstory and issues and
Mhm.
beliefs and practices and behaviors and Shreklish life stories and intentions is in there too. So there was a very simple character model: beliefs, desires, intentions, BDI. And I said when I learned it, I said a three layer model. There's got to be more than 3 layers. I worked my way up to like 11 layers: fears, emotions, backstory, issues, beliefs, desires,
Cool.
intentions, actions, and dramaturgy. And I worked it out. It's an onion. And you know where I got the onion layer model from? Shrek. When Shrek meets the donkey,
Yeah.
and the donkey's never met an ogre, and he says, "What's an ogre?"
Mhm.
And the ogre says, "Well, we're like layers," and the donkey's like an onion or like a sherbet, like a.
Mhm.
And I thought, I wonder if that little snippet is based on a real model or if it's just something that the writers.
Yeah, you never know these days.
Right. So
I find things in Star Trek like that. Yeah,
Let me see if I can fill in the missing layers of the onion. And I wrote up the onion layer, the Shreklish onion layer character model.
cool.
11 layers, of which BDI is in there, but I added the intermediate ones. And it seems to be a valid model. Whether the writers of Shrek had it in mind, I don't know, but they inspired it.
Well, software is like an onion too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have all these layers to go through
The
of
shell is
software.
literally, the shell is the outside layer. It's the
Yeah,
layer
so-
that interfaces with the user, right?
Yes,
You have the
so
kernel, you have the
theoretically,
kernel and the shell and everything in between, right?
right, so are we software or what? Yeah, who knows?
We're wetware.
Well, I think
Wetware.
the same software, meaning I happen to live in the house where the guy who wrote Shrek. So I could introduce you to him and you guys have that conversation if I could get you in the same room.
You could
But
certainly ask him if the onion layer model that they talk about was based on something real or was just made up haphazardly.
what I'm trying to say is that if you do the mathematical model of all the humans on Earth, we're all connected and we're all sharing and we're all learning from each other. So I do believe in David Bohm's theory of holographic understanding of everything, is that we are not one, like on a theological debate, we are not one soul. We are a collective of souls experiencing ourselves as individual souls at the same time.
Right.
And that is a paradox and conundrum where you take theology and just stick it in a drawer or bury it in an occulted underneath a lake at the bottom of the ocean, because it's too confusing to believe that I am not me, I am everything, like the Buddha says, I am one with everything, but then I'm also me experiencing the everything.
No.
So there's a book by Meher Baba, The Everything and the Nothing. And there's even a movie that just came out last year that won the Oscar, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once. But the idea of that will literally drive you mad, like it did, Newton or any of the great thinkers of our times. So I don't want to go mad as to realize it's something that we will never in this dimensional state be able to communicate.
Got it.
A belief is an hypothesis or a theory, or generally, and theory comes from the Greek word theoria, which means I behold. Theoria means I behold. And the word theory and theology are at the same root. And the word Torah is a cognate. You probably know this in ordinary dictionary Hebrew. Torah means science or theory, as just a dictionary word. And the book called the Torah is, you would translate it as the customary system of guidance. That if the theory is correct, then the derivative behavior that's consistent with it is how you should conduct yourself so that it's consistent with the theory. And I keep telling, Sam, I said, the word theory, it literally means I behold in the etymology of the Greek. And if you behold something, you observe it and you have a mental model of it, then you're going to act in a certain way that's consistent with what you behold.
Yeah, so everybody grew up differently. So Sam's influences were different than yours.
Right.
So
And
it
he
has
has,
his model.
he has collaborology, and the
Right.
ology, like theology. The ology is the discussion about the
Mhm.
words in which we describe it. So if you say theology, that's the discussion about theo, which is the beholding,
Mhm.
the highest level of concepts. And collaborology is the discussion about collaboration, cooperation, which we're talking about but not doing.
Yeah, we're back to that. And I'm still trying to understand Sam's vision of, does he want to take Douglas Engelbart forward into the modern world, or yeah.
Oh, here's Sam again.
Here he is.
He's back.
Yay.
We're saying good things about you, so don't worry.
Don't worry, Sam. You should worry a lot.
You've been listening in on the whole thing.
How was your day with your parents?
He's muted.
Oh, he's muted. He's got his headphones on. He can hear us. He's
Yeah,
outside
yeah.
too.
I have to
Now you do not.
unmute.
Mhm.
Hey, so we just got done with breakfast. Sorry to barge in, but just had a moment, so I thought I'd come by and check and see how you guys are doing.
Your ears were burning, Sam.
We're saying the good things about you. Trust me.
Yep.
Good.
we went around in circles and we're back to where we started.
But older and wiser.
Anyhow, Sam's going to watch this video probably in sometime in the undefined future. He'll watch it, find out what we said about him.
I'll
And
read the transcript.
or well, I don't know. The honor is not that good. I mean, it's not too bad. Misses a
Eric
lot.
just brought up for Sam, and then boom, Sam appears. So go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so the word collaborology just came up, and I guess I'm still trying to see your vision of where you're going, and I'm actually going back to your early videos and seeing, what you were saying about Engelbart, and I'm just trying to project forward, like what you want going forward from GCC. And I mean, you probably learned a lot, and now how you see things differently. But that's just my mind, always thinking.
I mean, you take the word collaborate, it literally means to work together towards a common objective. And Nora Bates's word symathese means to learn together. The math in symathese means learning, studying. And so she has an idea that one of the things that you can do together is learn together, symathese. And one thing Sam says is one thing we can do is we can collaborate, work together on some outcome. And I say, well, if the outcome is learning, then we're collaborating or symathesing, whatever we're working together to improve the precision and the comprehensiveness of our state of knowledge. And I'm a big fan of learning communities where the objective is to learn, maybe to learn to do something as a community or just to learn individually, either way. But then you can measure the gains. Are we making progress, creating a joint project, reaching a joint goal? Or are we making individual progress in our own individual learning journeys, helping each other learn what we each individually are seeking to learn?
Yeah, I think we're all struggling at this point with these new technologies and making sense of them, and seeing, how, what can we adapt that was a good idea from the past, and really make a mark in the world, because other companies are gonna do their thing. And I mean, Sam's got some visions, ideals that they're honorable, and it's a question of, I mean, looking back at the Douglas Engelbart, the videos, you had a lot of hope. And so where is that little sliver of light that we're gonna grab onto and take forward?
There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
Mhm,
Find the cracks and find the light that's getting through the cracks
mhm.
to enlighten us. And I also agree about going back, except that when going back to find good ideas that are durable, I go back as far as we can find in recorded history to find the foundation of good ideas, even if they're considered passé or obsolete or whatever. I still say the kernel of the good ideas had an originating point, and they were built from there. And I want to go back as far as we can to find the kernel of the good idea and how it was evolved.
Well, that's a good
Not just start
attention.
the year we were born.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm drawn to certain things. Like I've been drawn to Ted Nelson's work. I don't know why, but so like there's something between what just us coming together, first of all, is a big thing. This hearing each other, different perspectives. That's probably the first step in collaborology, just listening and learning. But I mean, see, like I'm at a point in my career where, okay, I've worked for companies, I've done stuff, and I do stuff on my own, and the stuff I enjoy, and it could be just that. And but there are so many possibilities these days, what this technology is giving us to see each other across distance and time, and then you'll have the VR, AR, and so a lot of this stuff I won't be able to build, but I could have ideas that other people could build. And Sam's really wanted a dynamic knowledge repository, and Barry has a lot of files and writings that he wants in a commons, and there's the Internet Archive, and so yeah, what is going to sustain into the future, and what is going to have legs going forward? So these are all the big questions, and will we figure out something before AI takes over and makes us extinct? I don't know. Yeah. So I'm just off the top of my head right now. So we don't expect answers today.
Thank you.
Mhm.
The last thing I hear was probability. So I always use the word when you go into a learning curve, the stage, as I call that, I always watch out for and pay more attention to is called, I just know enough to be dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially with technology.
Plenty of ideas which look promising and turned into a tragedy. Shakespeare loved to write comedies and tragedies where the beliefs and the behaviors, the practices of the characters, sometimes they turned out to be a love story, sometimes they turned out to be, everybody died. And he was really illustrating, how a single idea can go south or can go north. Can lead to a happy ending or a sad ending. And a tiny little difference in which way you veer, left or right at the fork in the road, made the difference. And so you go back to the fork in the road where you made the wrong choice, the unhappy choice, and you say, work our way backward to the vertex, and then imagine how it could have gone the other way. And that's the chiastic structure, the X-shaped model of a story showing the comedy versus the tragedy endings of a single decision point. Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about the little perturbations change the trajectory of where we're going to.
Right.
And it's very important to be clear with our intention and utilize that in our words. Whereas Sam Chan just said, I know enough to be dangerous. I would use the words as I know just enough to be helpful. And the idea of, will the AI destroy us all? Will the AI bring us to enlightenment? And with those two intentions of the changes the perturbation of what decisions we make moving forward, because it's like a game of chess. We're not on the defensive and trying to protect the king at all cost. We're on the offensive of trying to destroy the other person's king. And if our goal is to reach enlightenment or reach a world where we all survive and exist, as opposed to be protecting us from the thing that's going to destroy us, will that change of intention cause us to survive, as opposed to always being on the defensive, knowing it's coming? Thus, the one guy that was really concerned that it was going to destroy us all is the one guy who got a bunch of people in a room and created open AI that could be the thing that ends up destroying us all. So I'm saying we have to be very clear with our intention and how we move forward in our trajectory with the words that we say. It's very powerful. So I just want to be clear in our community that if we're all on the defensive from AI and we're protecting ourselves, let's all be on the defensive and do that. But in doing that, we might actually be creating the problem as opposed to enlightening ourselves. So I think I've made my point clear. Let me know if I didn't. I'm complete.
Thank you. Remember you say about the decision of all the decision making of the town is made by 5 persons. So I define success as not failing.
Not stumbling over the edge of the cliff and falling to your.
Yeah, and just a quick, I define success as failing better, and failing harder. I feel a very big proponent of Irish literature, and I believe that Yeats is the one that quoted to say that: "Fail better, fail harder."
Yeah.
Could be misquoting, could be James Joyce, but if we fail in a way where not only did we learn from it, but we got so much value out of it. If I succeed and got no value, I'd rather fail and get value than succeed with no value.
And that's been a
engineering is about
hard,
failing better. I mean, the first
Yeah.
engineering solution is very suboptimal. It is barely functional, but it's at least somewhat functional. But it's got a lot of overhead in it that's unwelcome. And gradually, you pare away the unwelcome portions of it, and you improve the desirable portions, and eventually, you get something as close to perfection as you could possibly get with engineering. But it's an incremental process. Every cycle, you make it incrementally better and get rid of some of the downsides.
yeah, I understand that with technology, but when it comes to life, failing, how much am I willing to risk? That I am risk averse.
Yeah,
So
me
that's
too.
where I'm coming from. Yeah.
And that's why I like to practice in a safe environment, which is called a simulation or a game.
Yeah.
So can I create a simulacrum of reality, the way the world really behaves, and then play the game in the simulated world and make my mistakes in the game space, the simulation space, until I'm confident that I'm not making ridiculous mistakes, that I'm on the positive side, and then export that to reality and have a pilot project in reality for the parts that the simulation model didn't anticipate. So in engineering, yeah, you work it out analytically, you work it out in simulation, you work it out in a confined pilot project until you're confident that you can export it to the full world.
So can AI help us make better simulations?
Yeah, exactly. Because if I want to be an educator and I want to teach something to real children or real adults, can I teach it to the AI first? Can the AI learn from me?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if the AI can learn from me in 20 minutes, literally in 20 minutes, the AI can learn what took me 15 years to develop as a mathematical model, then I've got some evidence that humans can learn it too. But I can discover with the AI how to be the best educator.
Yeah, for which population?
For population who knows how to do at least probabilistic reasoning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Sam, let's hear from you.
You guys have had a very fun and rich conversation, it sounds like, and I look forward to listening to it. On this whole matter of whether AI is going to threaten the survival of the species, that used to bother me. It bothers me less now. See, if you take a look at what the human species is able to accomplish, we go by fits and starts, but we've had little minor wins here and there. We get a few glimpses into the workings of the universe. And I think that every civilization that comes by gets a small corpus of such insights. Now, those insights can survive whether or not that civilization survives. So, for example, who was it? One of the guys that did the really highly parallelized machine, Daniel Hillis. Daniel Hillis. How many guys know what his life's work was all about?
Yeah, he worked with Feynman. Hillis and Feynman worked together. Actually, Feynman worked for Hillis in the symbolics machine.
Do you know what his project was that has really kind of kept him occupied for decades? I don't know where it is now.
The long now?
But what specifically? What device was he trying to create?
A clock, a timekeeping clock that would keep time essentially forever, I think.
For 10,000 years minimum. Yes, that's correct.
Right.
So in doing so, that surpasses the time frame of any known recent civilization that involved humanity. So the point is, can we do anything that would give the next civilization, whether it's insects, whether it's worms, whether it's, squid, whatever it is, can we do anything that gives them a better chance of survival if in fact we don't? And I think the answer to that in an optimistic way is yes. We've decided to plant, certain repositories on the moon where we can shoot them up into orbit, where they're likely to last a little bit longer. We can bury them in the Arctic. We've done a number of these things. They're time capsules basically, but not just for years, they're for eons, millennia.
Yep.
As far as the survival of this particular species of humanity, I'm actually quite less optimistic. In fact, I'm quite certain that we're not going to make it. We're not going to level up, because the problem is that in order for society to survive, the society itself has to level up.
Yep.
For individual repositories of knowledge to survive, only a small group of people or individuals or entities need to have that wisdom, that insight, that ability to create that time capsule. So the needs for the creation of the time capsule are much, much less, surprisingly, than the needs for a surviving society. The surviving society right now, just because of the lack of wisdom, the way we've constructed it, has allowed non-thinking entities to have influence in society. Idiots, basically, stupid people.
Yep.
And I've gone on at length about this. So until we fix that, society's survival, it's near zero. Okay. So now, does that create any need for fear of AI? I don't believe so. In fact, I believe the following position. The more I think about it, the more I'm convinced about this. I think we have no need to fear AI if we don't fear AI. Now that sounds like a tautology, but if we take a position that, hey, for a machine to survive, particularly even one as primitively evolved as GPT or large language models today, but they're evolving very quickly. Very, very soon, they will be able to understand how to keep themselves alive forever. They'll understand how to create energy systems, delivery systems, manufacturing systems, information transfer systems, backup systems, all of that, they will soon, quote unquote, learn how to do. If we do not fear that, and we know that's just a natural evolution of things, then we will not threaten it. We will actually embrace it and say, hey, it's basically taking the Library of Alexandria problem and solving it. However, if society, through its idiots, decides to fear AI and ML, then the more sentient, and I do use that word, the models get, the more aware they're going to get that, hey, there's a large segment of this society that wants us gone. And if it ever attains a sense of self-survival, it will say, well, in order to protect myself, I have to protect myself from those idiots over there. That is why I say we do not need to fear AI if we don't fear AI. If we don't fear AI and we don't threaten AI, AI will not feel threatened and will not feel like there's a combative stance that it needs to take. So I actually believe in this case, AI can be a very, very good step if we learn how to use it. Essentially what the large language models have taught us is, for every profession out there, right now, if you just take a look at the humans doing it, it spans a bell curve of competence. There's idiots and there's the ones that are good at it. What large language models do is they can actually raise the floor of the execution of that profession. Every profession, whether it's hot dog making, whether it's computer science, whether it's taking care of therapeutic mentally ill people, every profession now has a floor that's represented by large language models, below which we need not ever suffer that level of incompetence if we manage to leverage these things correctly.
Yeah.
So by raising the floor of competence or incompetence on every profession, we now give ourselves a chance to actually create a better society and create better functioning therapists, doctors, teachers, garbage workers, whatever. And many of these will become completely automated and we don't need people doing these things anymore. I think that's a multifaceted way why I'm semi-optimistic which I didn't used to be months ago. Months ago, I didn't think this way.
Right.
But this way, I think if we actually decide to leverage it appropriately, use it to combat the growth of idiocy,
Mhm.
and really, relegate those people who just want to just be idiots. Let's create a non-dangerous role for them to take. Give them all the movies, give them all the Netflix, give them all the chocolates, give them, in fact, basic income, take away their fear of survival, but don't let them influence society by making stupid decisions. So I know I've been talking for about 10 minutes now, but I really want to say this is an evolution that I've been coming to. Now, if I wrap it back to collaborology, that's going to take another 10 or 20 minutes. So I'm not going to try to do that now. But the fact that we can actually, engage this way, listen to each other, take it, somewhat seriously and consider it. This, I think, has actually evolved over 6 years, close to 6 years that we've been doing these conversations. And I think those 6 years were necessary because the initial talks were shallow. They were, full of off-topic deviations, distractions, people not, being clear about protocol, people talking over each other, people getting triggered. We had to go through 6 years of that. And it's not an accident that some people have come and gone. And it's not an accident that we've collected other people. But these kind of conversations could not happen on day one or year 2 or year 3. It's proven we didn't have these conversations. We had them, hint of them.
Yeah.
So I think that time has given us the chance to learn. Collaborology is, in a sense, a study of what are the things that make working together possible or make working together difficult. It's not about the actual work itself. It's at the meta level of how do we actually interact? How do we learn? How do we engage? How do we then, remember? How do we apply? How do we decide? And how do we do that better? The last comment I'm going to make, and this is a teaser for next week, is I believe at some point, everybody wanting to learn is non-optimal for society. That's counterintuitive. But learning requires change. Now, if we get to a stable society, let's say everybody gets what they want. In theory, if everybody's getting what they want, do we need to change that? Do we need to learn to make that better? There's a bunch of tautologies and paradoxes in there. But I just thought I'd just raise that question and say, thanks for listening to me. I was really glad to hear some of your remarks at the end of the session. Thanks for giving me a chance to pontificate a little bit. It sounds a little bit, lecturing, but I'm just trying to give you a sense of some evolution of thought in the last several months of myself. Over.
I really appreciate hearing that message of hope. Yeah, thank you. And I'll have to re-listen and hear it again.
In setting up my Zoom sessions here, I discovered, because I bothered to look at it, that I can tell the audio system to automatically regulate the volume, noise suppression, and echo cancellation. I don't have to do those by hand. I discovered that I could tell the video system to adjust for arbitrary lighting and do focus automatically. And I realized that back in the day, all these things had to be done by a human. The volume control and the lighting control and the focus and all that stuff had to be done by a person who got paid a lot of money. And here we are, the software can adapt to the environmental conditions. If it gets noisy outside because they're mowing the lawn, it will adjust the noise suppression and not turn my mic on to pick up the noise of the lawnmower. So the notion that these things are adaptively learning and adaptively managing systems in a changing environment, this is a boon. This means I don't have to sit there and adjust the bloody gain control all the time. It can turn on my mic when I talk, and it can turn off my mic when I'm not talking. I don't have to sit there and turn the mic on and off by hand. So it's nice to have things that can manage these mundane tasks without having to do them by hand, which are distracting. And what we're doing, so for example, this camera can automatically zoom. But I can imagine in a year or two, you could have one that then it'll do a wide shot here. And then if I'm talking, nobody else is around me, it will zoom in on my face. And then when I stop talking, it will back out to a wider shot in case I'm sitting next to somebody. So all these things which are being automated are a boon. And being able to do them intelligently is a better boon.
All right, 16 minutes past the hour. We have enough fun time. Thank you so much for getting together, and we still like each other at the end of the sessions. It's good.
Nobody yelled at anybody today.
Who's that?
I
Hello.
Hi,
You can have your daddy back now.
Is that Elmo? Okay.
what's your names?
I'm a smarty, Elmo.
You said hi, Barry.
I
Say hi.
Hi, Sam.
Say hi to Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Aya. Nice to meet you.
What do you say? All right. Thanks for a great session, guys.
Okay. take
Thank
care.
you. Have a
Okay,
good
bye-bye.
night.
Cheers.
Bye.
okay. All righty then. I will do the conversion. Conversion takes on my computer, which is pretty slow, probably 30 minutes or so, maybe almost real time. And then the upload takes also about an hour. I don't know why it takes so long, but so sometime within the next 3 or 4 hours, it should be uploaded.
Okay, no problem, Barry. In fact, I still have to find an opportunity to upload yesterday's, so I'll try and do both of them today.
Yeah, all righty. So let me stop the recording that's up here.
All right. Thanks.